Well, how about your critics who say that, for instance, when you allow the money to follow the child and go from one school to another, and if they have choice and can take that money with them to a private school, that you're not damaging the public school system? What do you say back to those critics?
Well, I guess that's a function of our own education system. People that think like that, we're spending $10,000 per kid and we take $5,000 and put it to a public school or a private school. It seems to me like we're saving $5,000. We're not costing $5,000. And so you take that $5,000 and you spread it over the rest of the kids, and your expenditures per pupil actually increase, okay, rather than decrease.
So that is your argument. Well, we have with us now, joining us, Senator Joel Lurie from Richland County. Senator Lurie, I was just talking with Senator Vaughn about the question. We were talking about choice in public schools. We just got finished talking about in the public schools, as Superintendent Rex has indicated. And we had just begun exploring allowing money to follow the child, and if they could go outside of the public system, would that hurt public education? I asked him, and he just gave you his answer. What's your answer to that, sir? If I can just catch you right here now, if you're on the set.
Sure, I would. My answer would be the opposite of his answer. And Senator Vaughn and I are old friends. We served in the House together. But I look at it this way. I think our public schools are some of the most important initiatives we have in government, are to provide a sound public education system. And these are not user fees. These are not taxes that people can decide whether they want to pay or not pay. It's kind of like the local law enforcement, local library, the local parks and recreation. You pay taxes to support those initiatives as you pay taxes to support your public schools. And I think if we get into an environment where people get to decide at the end of the year, if they're not happy here, they're going to pull their child out and homeschool them, or they're going to pull their child out and move them to a private school or religious school. I think it would benefit just a few school children in South Carolina, and it would be to the detriment of thousands. I really think it would be the beginning of the end of public education as we know it. I support Dr. Rex's program for choice within the public school system. I'm a co-sponsor of his bill, along with many other Democratic and Republican senators. But I think where many folks like myself will draw the line in the sand on this debate, and I mean a big line in the sand, is on this subject of taking money out of the public school system and allowing those funds to be transferred over into a private school environment or a homeschool environment. I think that's where you really are going to see the whole issue fall apart if we ever get that debate on the floor in the Senate.
Well, let me ask you this. If the child is trapped in a failing school and there's no room in the adjoining good system, what do you say to a gentleman like him who says that child ought to have the opportunity to escape that? The public system's failed. And if they don't have the money, the people with money can escape it. But the people that don't can. And he was making the point that at least some of especially those in the poverty line, should have some means of escape. And if the public system fails them, what's your response to that?
I think we have to fix the public system. I think, Senator McConnell, we've been down in the legislature for years while this lawsuit's been going on about the corridor of shame. Okay? And I would say to those that are so concerned about removing these children out of those schools, I'd take a different approach. Let's fix the problem. If there's a problem in Dillon County or in Marion County or in Allendale, let's go beneath the surface and see what the problem is. I visited these schools. I've seen the deplorable conditions of the facilities at a school like J.V. Martin Middle School that was built before Strom Thurmond was born. Okay?
Great.
1896.
That one's been there for a while.
Yes, sir. And I've walked the halls of some of these schools, and quite honestly, I'm embarrassed as both a citizen and a state senator that we allow that to exist in the year 2007. So my goal would be to fix the problem. If these schools have problems with their facilities, with recruiting and retaining teachers, then I would assume, I think we're much better off moving forward in South Carolina and fixing the problem than just allowing children to leave those schools and be homeschooled in situations where there's really no accountability, or in private schools where they don't meet perhaps the same type of standards that we have here in South Carolina. We have very tough accountability standards. I think that's a much better way long term for South Carolina than opposed to sort of allowing one kid to move from this school to a home school to a private school. I think that sets a very dangerous precedent, and if we allow that to happen, we will be in a larger state of disrepair for years to come.
Senator Vaughn, he says that fix the schools is the way to go. Do you agree with what he's saying, or you disagree?
I agree. We need to fix the schools, no question about that. But I'm reminded of the old saying, if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got. And I'm a little bit older than Senator Lurie.
Right.
I have been through these processes where you're going to fix the schools. But my question to those folks that want to fix the schools is, what do you do with these generations you lose while you're fixing them? And that those kids are just as important to their parents as the kids are going to be 20 years from now. So the point is this, again, I go back to the point. Everyone wants great public schools, the best public schools you can possibly have. Everyone wants the best possible education for every kid you can get. The difference between the pro-school choice people and the people opposed is pro-school choice people put the education of the kids above the system itself. The anti-school choice people put the system above the kids themselves, and that's the point.
Your response,
Senator, if I could, I just would respectfully disagree with that. Nobody wants to defend the status quo of our school system. Okay, I think we've made improvements. I think we've made improvements for the last several years, and I think there are other things we need to be doing. And I commend Jim Rex for his initiatives here. I mean, he has basically said, look, I've traveled the state. I've run as tough a campaign as anybody in last year's election. And what I've heard is that we've got to do better, and that's why he's proposed a choice program within the public school system. But I go back to what I said earlier. Nobody is defending the system and putting the system above the children, Senator. What we're saying is, let's come together and fix the system. You're right. There is a generation. This lawsuit that's been going on about this failure to provide a minimally adequate public education, which, if anybody ever tells me they're going to vote for me because I've been minimally adequate, I'm not going to consider that a compliment. The terms minimally adequate have always bothered me.
Yeah.
This lawsuit's been going on for, 12 years, 10 years. When we've had a whole group of students that have gone through this school system, and I would sort of tell you that I think the conversation needs to be more about how can we improve the system, not defend the system, improve the system so that we lift all the children of South Carolina, as opposed to allowing a few that possibly might be able to take advantage of a voucher system or a tax credit system to move from one school to a private school, and they may not be happy there, so next year they may homeschool their children, and those tax dollars are flowing. And I want to go back to something we talked about earlier about whether financially that hurts or helps. I would tell you it hurts, and let me give you an example. Forest Lake Elementary School just won one of the Palmetto's Finalist Awards, a school that I attended. Both my daughter and my son attended. A wonderful school, okay, a wonderful little neighborhood school. If 10 children next year leave that school, 2 in every grade, 2 in first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and they use $5,000. They take that with them, and they take that home to be homeschooled or private school. That money leaves the public education system. Okay, that's $50,000 essentially less that we're going to have to operate Forest Lake Elementary School. Okay, now we still got a staff, we still got an electricity bill, we still got to pay teachers and all those things. But if we allow that money to leave the public education system, they're going to have to make cuts somewhere in the system. And I would argue that I think it doesn't help. I think it hurts the school system when you do that.
Senator, what's your response to that?
My response to that is, if it's a good school, the kid's not going to leave to begin with. But if they do leave, they leave the local dollars there with that school. And the point is, again, you go back overall within the state, Senator Lurie. Let me tell you, if you're in your private business, okay, are doing something that costs you $100 to make a unit of whatever you're making, you can contract that out and get it for $50. What are you going to do? And get the same quality. Okay. So I'm just simply saying that the competition over time will it bring to the public and the private schools will bring all of our kids up. And I'm just simply saying that if you had a full-scale choice system in this state and the public school systems were very good, you'd have very, very few people leaving the public school.